Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show on this Tuesday, the 14th of June, 2022. Well, the bond market, the debt market, it's become unstable now. This is the final straw. We're moving into very, very perilous times for the safety of yourselves, your family, your liberty. It's going to be you're going to find out that there's no real justice within the system. That everything becomes dangerous now as we move into this precarious time. You see, we went into a time like this back in the 1930s called the Great Depression. I know it's before most of our times. We don't remember. But, even back then, the way people were back then is totally different than they are today. People had a sense of civic pride and duty. They had good morality back then. The generation was not spoiled. They were good, honest, hard-working people. It's just that they met upon hard times. And during that period in time, I can't begin to tell you how many home invasions there were during the Great Depression. They don't talk about this much. But basically, when people get hungry and desperate, they can turn on each other. And back then, the population in America was not near as great as it is now. And the attitude of the people was totally different than it is now. We're heading into a very perilous time coming up ahead because by the central bank. And they're triggering it just like they triggered it after 1929. The Fed triggered the Great Depression, and now they're triggering it again. They're making it happen all over again. History is repeating itself. But this time it's going to be a lot worse because of the people. And because they've removed the way people can access food. Back in the 1930s, an awful lot of people escaped the Great Depression. In fact, it's one of the lore of Americana is the hobo riding the rails. Well, they were doing it not because they wanted to create Americana lore. They did it because they wanted to survive. They left the cities and they got on the trains and they went out into the country with a knapsack, which is a little sack that's made from a handkerchief or whatever, wrapped around a stick, hung over their shoulder, and it was iconic of the hobo. And they had all their worldly possessions in that little bag that they carry. Generally, their clothes were scruffy, and they would go down the country road. Back then, in those days, were dirt roads, and they'd look for a farm or whatever, and they'd knock on the door, and the people would come out, and they'd say, can we help you? And they'd say, well, I'm starving, I'm hungry, I got no work, can I do anything around here on the farm? And oftentimes, they would say, okay, yeah, you can start working tomorrow morning for your dinner. You work for your meal, and you can sleep in the barn. So they gave them shelter. They were able to sleep in the barn. Okay, it wasn't the greatest accommodations. And they gave them food, and they kept them alive during the Great Depression. But this doesn't exist today to help the people out when this event starts to hit full force. And I'll tell you, I have my doubts. Yes, the Federal Reserve can pump more money in, but they've started the ball rolling for a depression. And if they come in and they start just pumping money in willy-nilly, they're just going to create a hyperinflationary depression. And that's what we're headed into. We're headed into the front side of a different kind of depression. The depression in the 1930s was a deflationary depression. This is going to be a hyperinflationary depression, which is actually worse. Because this affects, in the 1930s, the depression back then affected people that couldn't get a job or whatever, and the money didn't work. I mean, for people, they just couldn't get money, is what I'm trying to say. The money still worked. If you could get money in the Great Depression, it would work. But a hyperinflationary depression Even if you can get money, even if you have an access to money, even if you got a social security check coming in every month, or you got money coming in every month, the money ceases to function. Whereas the Great Depression of the 1930s, the money still functioned. Everybody wanted it because it was worth so much more than it's normally worth, but it functioned really well. If you had money, you could buy anything you wanted during the Great Depression. And civil order stayed in place. In other words, the police continued to function all the way through the Great Depression. But this time around, in a hyperinflationary Great Depression, I should call it Greater Depression, things stop functioning because the money stops functioning as a unit of exchange. It does function, but it loses value so quickly that it's almost like it ceases to function. It doesn't function properly. Endless amounts of problems we're heading toward. And this whole can of worms is opening up right now. And let's get in there and let's take a look at these markets today. And I'm going to point out some of the really bad things that's going on right now. We got the silver price at $20.96 and dropping. It's dropped 7 cents today. Cryptocurrency price has found a little bit of stability at 949 billion. The price is at 22,503. Let me just refresh the page. 22,448 for Bitcoin. Let's take a look now at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and we're going to refresh the page. It's down 138 points so far at 30,379. Now, I told you guys, I think the Fed, when it drops below 30,000, they're going to get really nervous. They're not going to pretend, they're going to pretend like they're not nervous at all. They're going to pretend like, hey, it's time to gung-ho. Let's get in there and let's raise interest rates. Let's crush inflation. That's how they're going to be. But at the same time, when it drops below 30,000, behind the scenes, they're going to be like, what in the hell? What are we going to do? The stock market's dropping like a stone. All the markets are dropping. And they're a little bit almost edgy. They're edgy when it drops below 30,000. When it drops a few more thousand lower than that, then the pressure's going to start to come on them to turn around. And they will turn around. They're going to turn this thing around. And I'm staying right on course for what I said. I think they're going to turn around 26,000. I think they're going to turn this thing around. Maybe a little bit lower than that, but in that area, I think that they're going to get too nervous and they're going to relent. Their bluff is going to get called. But by that time, they will have triggered the Greater Depression. They will have burst all the bubbles, and there's no way they can really ultimately fix that. They're not going to be able to fix the economy that easily because it's structured in a way where it's just going to continue to hyperinflate until it purges the system out. And ultimately, the real higher-ups, when you get past all these ones who are these lower officials, like officials in the Fed and everything else, and you get to the real big boys out there, they don't mind seeing inflation. They don't care about what it's doing to the people out there. They don't mind seeing it because they say the inflation's 8.6%, right? That means you lose 8.6% of your money on top of all the taxes you're paying on top of that. So they're basically taking it all. It's basically like they send you a tax form and it says, write down what you make last year. And then the next line it says, send it in. I mean, it's just, they got to the point where it's just outright theft through it. This inflation is outright theft of your hard-earned. You might have worked all your life, build up a little bank account for yourself, and worked hard for that money. And they're going to steal. Now, officially, it's 8.6% per year, but it's really, we all know it's double that. So they're going to steal 16% just in the first year. So if you worked all your life and you saved up, say, I don't know, quite a good sum of money, they're going to steal 16% of it roughly in the first year of what you can purchase with that money. Well, the money hasn't changed. It's still the same amount of money, but what you can purchase with it, you've lost 16% of your purchasing power. Now, inflation's going to increase. It's going to go to double 16, 32, 64, and so on. And it's gonna go. It's gonna that time frame. It's just gonna take off. It's called hyperinflation, guys, and it robs you. It's a hidden tax. It robs you of everything. Your life, your livelihood, everything. And what really frightens me is if the people do not unite, right? But rather, what the people, if the people decide to turn on each other, that's a frightening situation, because that means that basically, do you remember that show where they had the guy? I can't remember his name. He used to do they called the Dog Whisperer or something like that. And there's some little dog, a Chihuahua, on there, and the Chihuahua, he says, "You do that the wrong way." He says, "He win, he win." The Chihuahua, he's talking about the Chihuahua. I thought that was funny. Anyway, he win, they win, they win, and what'll happen is there'll be an awful lot less of us left out here, because the situation that they've generated is a situation where it would make us turn on each other. To basically, we're all starving. They're impoverishing us all, and they're just going to stand back on their ivory tower and say, "Look at them down there! Look at them! They're all going at each other. They're well, and it's almost like a giant Squid Game." Anyway, if you've ever watched that movie, you know what it is. Anyway, so we're down 124 points. Let's just refresh the page again here. Down 108. So it's bouncing down there. It doesn't look like it's going to be a positive day today for the Dow. And how can we have any positivity in the markets as long as the Fed is continuing to be like they are? And all they're going to do is wreck the economy, and then they're going to come back in with stimulation again. Heck, it's a perfect opportunity for them to create the situation needed, the barbaric situation needed, to bring forth their central bank digital currencies. The perfect excuse. Say, well, we got to help all these people out there that are below the poverty line or whatever. We got to send them a UBI. What's that going to do to the dollar? And how can they make a central bank digital currency dollar that's not pegged to the regular dollar? I don't see how they can do it. They have to peg it. They have to make it dollar for dollar. And once the central bank digital currency is the dollar, it's being adopted in that new form. And then they can just create all they want to send to people as UBI. What's it going to be worth then? And so, yeah, in the short term, we could see massive gains in the dollar. Okay. Right now, we got the oil price at 123.15. I'm going to refresh the page here. 122.86. Move index is shooting to the moon right now. 139.21. It's shot up really quickly. Looking at the yearly charts, going straight up, the move index. And this is stability in the credit markets. So the credit markets are becoming unstable. This is unstable. The U.S. Treasury now, the debt market has become unstable. It's become unhinged. It's going up too fast. What we got is a breakdown in the debt market. And, this is a very, very bad omen for what's coming, Seriously, guys, I wish all these shows I've produced over the years, it would have been nice if I had been wrong about all of it, instead of being right about all of it. Shows I did about how it's going to increase homelessness, is going to increase exponentially, how there's going to be cities of homeless people. Shows about how diseases are going to make a comeback. Different diseases we thought we were rid of, like the poxus for one. Another, they thought they eradicated smallpox. Basically, monkeypox is the same damn thing, or similar, very similar. Diseases like tuberculosis, honest to gosh, because they're creating these situations the management of the system is at fault, not the people. You make that very clear. The management is at fault. The ones who are managing this system are right now, they're running it into the ground. They haven't got it. I've never seen such a poor crew on deck as we got right now. I've never seen anything like it. They're gonna have us. We're none of it. Half of us are not gonna make it if they keep on. If they stay on, if they're allowed to continue making the rules, half of the people in my audience will just be gone. Our lives, our liberty are being threatened by these maniacal. I can't put words on it. Is the crew that's in there right now and running this system? I've never seen. I'm not going to call it to incompetence. It's beyond talking about. Anyway, look at what's happening with the bonds. This is frightful. This is frightful that they're moving this quick. 10 years up 8.1 basis points today at 3.45. This is an explosion in the U.S. Treasury market. Debt market's unhinged. And this is a huge market. It's bigger than the stock market. And the ramifications of this. You know, I once said on my shows a few years ago, I said, once we go over 3.25 on the U.S. 10-year, we're in for a world of hurting. And while we're over it now, consistently over it, we're at 3.45. U.S. dollar index, 105.35. This thing could go up to 110, 115 before the system breaks down. You know, and some of these other countries are already starting to move into hyperinflation. Heading toward it. They're heading toward it really fast, like a steamroller. Anyway, thank you guys for listening to my show. Like and subscribe. And we'll catch you guys in the very next episode. Bye-bye.